quintessentially, that's what we learned through this aspect. How integrated are we in our worth? And what are our values? And are they built on stable ground? Don't look for the problem, the faultiness in the relationship. Look at what inside of you is reflecting whatever happens in or not or doesn't happen in the relationship. What insecurity, because that is an aspect that will bring up insecurities. But why is it going to bring it up? Because it wants you to integrate them in a healthier way. Good morning, my lovelies. Welcome back. So today we are going to talk about an aspect that, that has been highly requested, but that I've already talked about in other circumstances, other scenarios. And this aspect, as you probably already know because you clicked on this title, is this a synastry aspect between Venus and Saturn in square. I think we talked about this in composite. And there are a lot of similarities here, a lot of similarities, right? But also there are slight nuances there that are different, because a composite chart and a synastry chart are two different charts. So let's just talk about that for a second. The composite chart is the relationship, right? It's the chart of the relationship. It kind of is where we meet in the middle, right? It's the midpoint chart. So when I say where we meet in the middle, is kind of like, it's not I'm bringing all of me and you're bringing all of you, but it's more like, where do our energies intersect? And how does that then play out within the relationship? And then in the synastry chart, it uses the full chart of two people. So we have two charts on top of each other. So we get the full energy of one person and the full energy of another person. Okay, so let's dive in to this aspect in synastry. Now, first of all, what is Venus? Venus is our desires. Venus is our pleasures. Venus is our feminine energy. The feminine energy in all of us. The way we cultivate our feminine energy. And I say the way we cultivate it because, yes, feminine energy is feminine energy, but it moves through a certain body, like my body, your body, someone else's body, and it displays slightly differently. But it is still about pleasure, it's still about sensuality, it's still about beauty, it's still about desires and what we want in life. It's still about that, but it's almost like it's filtered through each body in its unique way, right? Because it's filtered through your lens, through your body, through your all of your energy that you hold, right? It's filtered through that. So then what is Saturn? Saturn is definition, boundary, structure, stability, strength, overcoming something, right? Saturn is overcoming something. That's why we also call Saturn the Lord of Karma. Overcoming something, learning, growing through it. Now, when these two come together in this rather difficult aspect, right? And I say difficult because it can bring up our insecurities, our weaknesses. A square, I don't know if you watched my video that explains to you the difference between a square and an opposition, right? A square is very different energy than an opposition. An opposition has more Saturn-like energy. A square has more Martian energy. Now, knowing that we have Saturn and Venus here, and between them there is Martian energy, right? That square is Martian energy. It's like, I want this and I want to push through it. Now, Venus pushing through something and Saturn pushing through something, different again, right? So when this square energy shows up between like soft little Venus and strong Saturn, you can imagine that it is not easy to handle for the Venus energy. And I say for the Venus energy, not for the Venus person, because energies flow both ways. Yes, in a synastry chart, one person will bring the Venus and the other person will bring the Saturn. It doesn't mean that the Venus person will only experience that Saturn energy. The Saturn person will also experience that Saturn energy. What do I mean by that? Now, we hear a lot, I mean, maybe you've read astrology books, maybe you've listened to other astrologers, read about this aspect before, and maybe you've heard that the Venus person will feel the hostility of the Saturn person, or the boundaries, the harshness, the coldness. That's all what the Venus experiences. And then the Saturn will just experience poor little Venus, who's there, who doesn't know what to do with the Saturn energy. No, that is not true. And I can tell you from experience that this is not true. Energy flow both ways. And yes, it is true that one person brings the Saturn energy, the other person brings the Venus energy, but we all hold Venus energy within us, we all hold Saturn energy within us, so we'll feel it. Is it true that possibly the Venus person will have a stronger experience of that harshness from Saturn in this square? Possibly. And I say possibly because I've had this square in a long-term relationship. And I was the Saturn. Or I brought my Saturn, we shall say. And my Saturn is in Libra, so my Saturn is generally a little more balanced, right? It's a little more balanced. So we have to, of course, look at it from that perspective too. Yeah, you have to look at where Saturn sits. You have to also look at what house Saturn sits in and what house Venus sits in, right? Those are the nuances we do have to look at. However, I was definitely also feeling that my Venusian essence stifled. Not all the time, but that Saturn energy that I brought, I also felt it within my feminine essence, right? Within my Venusian essence, within the Venusian energy. So yes, I brought the Saturn, but I also felt the Venus part, that this Saturn aspected, that this Saturn was squaring, and it was my Saturn. Now let's look into how we experience that in the Venusian, on the Venusian side, and how do we experience it on the Saturn side. Again, not as the person, but as the energy. So, for example, Venus might feel that their Venusian beauty, their feminine essence is not appreciated. The beauty is diminished. It's like, yeah, okay, you're beautiful, we know. And again, it is not only the Venus person that will feel that. And then on the other side, Venus may think Saturn is too harsh, Saturn is no fun. Saturn just wants you to work hard. It doesn't know how to love life, how to experience the pleasures of life. And Saturn then, on the other side, might think Venus is way too hedonistic in her approach to life. Just wants to celebrate it. Not necessarily in a party kind of way, that can of course also show up, but more in the way of like, Venus wants the best, wants the nice things. And Saturn thinks, have you worked for it? Have you worked for it? Have you done something for it? Why do you think you deserve it? There's often this, in this square, there's often this undeservingness showing up in both people though. Both people will feel like, am I deserving? This question of deservingness shows up a lot with these people, a lot. And this is one of the aspects, I think I said this about the composite as well, this combination. This shows up all the time. I mean, it's almost shocking how often this square between Venus and Saturn shows up in relationship charts. And maybe just in the ones I look at, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with me. But man, this aspect is so prevalent. And I think it shows us something. It shows us what we as a collective work on. Worth and value. How integrated are we when it comes to our worthiness? Because that is the quintessence, right? Quintessentially, that's what we learn through this aspect. How integrated are we in our worth? And what are our values? And are they built on stable ground? Are they built on stable ground? Are we having a stable relationship? Are we sharing core values? That will definitely come up. And you might have a sense of it in the beginning, but most likely it will show up after a while. Saturn can of course also feel very, there is a stability in you. You feel safe in a certain way. You don't really know why, but it makes you feel safe, right? There's the safety, like it's like, oh, I can lean on something. But with time, Saturn, a lot of time. With time, Saturn will reveal the lessons that both people need to learn. It's not just the Venus person needs to learn something or the Saturn person needs to, they both need to learn a similar lesson here, because that's the energy. That's why these people came together. There is the lesson of how integrated are you in your worth and values, and where is your growth potential here? How can you grow into it? And also, where are you actually not aligned with what you say you want in life? Saturn will show you that. It's like the cold hard truth that, that mirror where you look in and you're like, oh God, do I like what I see? So this is not an easy aspect. I mean, by no means, but I think you can work with it, but usually later in life. If you have this aspect when you're in your early 20s with someone, I mean, I'm not saying you're not able to work through it. You might be, but I think later in life, if you come together with someone in this aspect, I think you have much more life experience to handle the situation, handle the harshness, but also handle the other side, the pleasure. Of course, not always, but often when you get older, you have the life experience to decipher and discern, right? You go into a relationship with more discernment because you know much better who you are. Again, not always. Of course not. We all know the 45-year-old forever single man that never really had a relationship, that always just wanted to, have fun, not be serious. And then we also know the woman that is constantly the victim, constantly in the victim narrative, constantly the man is always, it's always the man's fault. We know, we know these people. And we know them at any age. However, from the bigger picture perspective, generally, we get older, we learn, we have life experience, and we can handle things in a different way, right? So this is not an aspect that you can breeze through. My own experience, I tried to, flow through it. Didn't work. I was like, yeah, let's just flow. Let's see what the flow is doing for us, with us. Because there is no flow in a square. Right? The square in and itself is not a flow aspect. That's the trine and the sextile to a degree. The square, there's nothing flow. You have to rearrange things there. My Pisces self was like, yeah, just let's flow. No, that's a recipe for disaster, and I do not recommend it for anyone. You got to do the work. And that work is not just within the relationship, but within yourself. Within yourself, that's where you got to begin. Don't look for the problem, the faultiness in the relationship. Look at what inside of you is reflecting whatever happens in or not or doesn't happen in the relationship. What insecurity, because that is an aspect that will bring up insecurities. But why is it going to bring it up? because it wants you to integrate them in a healthier way. That's what relationships do, right? They help us to learn about ourselves, to become more integral human beings, more integrated, less fragmented. We are all fragmented to a degree, no matter how old we are. There's always another layer, another fragment that can be integrated. But relationships help us to do that, and often they help us in a way that is really uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. So, if you still have questions about this aspect, please feel free to comment below. If you want a personal reading, you can book it by clicking on the link in the description box. I do all kinds of readings, birth chart, natal chart readings, Synastry, composite. Usually my relationship chart readings, they include everything. I look at the Davidson, I look at the Synastry, I of course look at the composite, and then I give you the reading from the perspective of the all, right? Looking at all of it. If you have specific questions about your chart, I can cater the reading to that, right? We can look at certain areas, how you can improve. My readings are usually coaching based. I don't tell you what to do, but I explain the energy to you, and I explain to you what you can learn here and how you can grow in this area and how you can possibly apply things differently to have a different outcome. So that's it for today. I love you and leave you, and I'll see you in the next video.